You're watching EASD Live, and actually while we're going out on air, the fabulous Barbara Corky, who perhaps you saw me interviewing earlier, is being made an honorary member of the EASD, having spent nearly 60 years in diabetes research. She said to me while we were chatting afterwards that there were only two rules for new recruits to her lab. One was that she didn't want them to agree with her. And the other one was that she didn't want people who wanted to be proved right. She wanted people to do research that actually said there was something that was unpredicted. She thought that was the way to great research. So great thoughts from a great lady. One of the things about EASD is it answers some of the questions that are burning questions of the day. And the one that was going on today was semaglutide, ingested or injected. And we have Tina Vilsboll from Copenhagen, who chaired that particular session, to talk to us now. So do we have the answer after your session?
Well, I would say in the future we will probably treat our patients both with an oral variant of semaglutide and also an injectable variant of semaglutide. But just having both in a session here at the EASD is really fantastic, because now we are actually in a situation where we, within not too long, will probably have a compound, a peptide that can be taken in orally. That's quite something because with insulin for decades, the pharmaceutical companies have tried to do it orally, sublingual, inhaled, but they never succeeded. And with GLP-1, it's a different story because it doesn't induce hypoglycemia, so it is not as dangerous. It doesn't matter that much whether there is a day-to-day variation in the absorption, because if you have a small absorption one day, well, you have semaglutide from the days before in the blood. And if you have a higher absorption, well, then you will eventually have a very, very nice steady state in the blood. So it's really interesting, and I'm thrilled about the fact that we now have the potential in the future to develop peptides in an oral formulation.
It's a remarkable feat, isn't it? Because we've tried to do that for many years, and it's held really diabetes back, because this whole variability with insulin has been made it very, very difficult for patients.
Yeah, it is, and what's really fantastic is not only the peptide, but specifically with GLP-1, which is a gastrointestinal hormone. It's actually being secreted down in the gastrointestinal tract. We were created with GLP-1 down there, but real native GLP-1 has a very short half-life. And now suddenly, well, it's not suddenly, but now we have a treatment for our patients with diabetes where GLP-1 is actually where it was meant to be. And that's a really interesting approach down in the gastrointestinal tract where it's absorbed, and it gets to have all the interesting effects that GLP-1 has on glycemic control, body weight, and also we know now that the effects of GLP-1s in patients with diabetes and cardiovascular disease are remarkable.
And actually this is a quite extraordinary success story in terms of research, because GLP-1 isn't really that old a discovery. I mean, it was discovered relatively recently.
Well, yeah, in the story of diabetes, it is. We have known the hormone for more than 20 years now. It has been on the market for treating our patients for around 10 years in different variants. And I started to do research 20 years ago, and everyone was not really interested in type 2, and absolutely not in GLP-1. Everyone was into genetics and all that. But now we realize that it is actually extraordinarily important, and a lot of things have happened to the knowledge about the pathophysiology of type 2 diabetes, where GLP-1 does actually have an impact. And then indeed we have now many different GLP-1 analogs and GLP-1 receptor agonists that are actually in our toolbox for treating patients with type 2 diabetes. And in the future, we actually expect that it will be developed for the treatment of obesity. So I'm really looking forward to the conferences to come as well.
So finally, what one message would you give to those people listening who haven't been at the Congress about GLP-1?
Well, if they haven't heard about GLP-1, they should sit down and read a couple of reviews about it, because it's now in the guidelines, it's in the position statement. to my opinion, far too few people are being treated with GLP-1 receptor agonists and also SGLT2s. We actually have some really, really good evidence-based guidelines right now that tell us pretty much how to do. Unfortunately, there are still patients in 2019 who are not treated with modern diabetology. So the challenge for us here as scientists and clinicians are to go back home, make sure that not only doctors who have been on this conference and who know the science will get to prescribe these new classes. It's extraordinarily important, and not just to do as you used to do because it's just type 2 diabetes. Treatment of type 2 diabetes actually changed from one conference to another. It goes really, really fast these years. It's a lot of fun to be a diabetologist.
Terrific, thank you. Well, very good recommendations there. And you've been watching EASD Live, much more to come.